Alrighty, so things are getting really real with the Subnautica situation all of a sudden. So, last night I had released a video talking about the Subnautica controversy between the former founders at Unknown Worlds and the distributor Crafton. Things were already looking a little bit suspicious, a little bit weird on both sides, frankly, and now things are getting even weirder. So, we'll get into that in just a second. First off, hi, I'm Laser Eyes. It's not my given name, but this is my YouTube channel where I talk about video games and such. If you like talking about video games, it would mean a lot to me if you'd hit like and the subscribe button, and we'll talk about video games together. So yeah, a quick update on the Subnautica stuff. Actually, a quick bit of context here. So there was a bit of a leadership shakeup at Unknown Worlds, or not a little bit. There was a fairly major leadership shakeup at Unknown Worlds. Crafton, the publisher, had ousted the original leadership of co-founders Charlie Cleveland and Max McGuire and former CEO Ted Gill. They have been fired from Unknown Worlds. They released a statement saying that it stung, it was stupid. They firmly believed that Subnautica 2 was ready for early access playing. There was a lot of suspicion that Crafton had fired them and then postponed the early access release of Subnautica in order to avoid paying a $250 million bonus that was supposed to be paid if Crafton hit certain revenue marks in 2025. And obviously, they're not going to hit those revenue marks with Subnautica 2's early access being postponed to 2026. So that was the $250 million dispute. Crafton had promised that much in bonuses. The game was abruptly delayed to 2026, which would invalidate the bonus payout, obviously sparking accusations that the delay was financially motivated. There's been a ton of fan backlash, with many calling for the boycott of Subnautica 2 and accusing Crafton of shady business practices and undermining the creative team. Crafton claims, though, that the delay was due to quality concerns and a lack of leadership involvement, while the ousted team insists the game was ready and the delay was arbitrary. Now, the game is still in development, though under new leadership at Crafton. The original devs are saying that they will fight to ensure the team gets the compensation they were promised. Just a little note, Crafton also released a statement that was a tad bit milquetoasty, but did also say that they were going to still give the developers something of a bonus, of a reward, some sort of compensation. What that looks like just yet, we don't really know. Now, last night I had said that Crafton was making a lot of accusations against the former developers, saying things like they were focusing on personal projects and not really focusing on the game too much, which are some interesting accusations. And the question was, would they hold up in a court of law? And as of yesterday, there was no lawsuit. Now, all of a sudden, there is a lawsuit. So we have this community update on the Subnautica Reddit from Charlie, which says, hello, everyone. It continues to be an explosive and surreal time for the Subnautica team and community. None of this is what we wanted, but we truly appreciate the amazing support we've gotten from everyone. It means a lot to us. As I wrote last week, we know in our souls that the game is ready for early access. That's just how we roll, and we'd like nothing more than for you to play it. But it's not currently under our control. We've now filed a lawsuit against Crafton. The details should eventually become at least mostly public. You all deserve the full story. Suing a multi-billion-dollar company in a painful, public, and possibly protracted way was certainly not on my bucket list, but this needs to be made right. Subnautica has been my life's work, and I would never willingly abandon it or the amazing team that has poured their hearts into it. As for the earnout, the idea that Max, Ted, and I wanted to keep it all for ourselves is totally untrue. I'm in this industry because I love it, not for the riches. Historically, we've always shared our profits with the team and did the same when we sold the studio. You can be damn sure we'll continue with the earnout bonus as well. They deserve it for all their incredible work trying to get this great game into your hands. Stay tuned, Charlie. Okay. So just real quick, calling this part out. So as for the earnout, the idea of Max, Ted, and I want to keep it for ourselves is totally untrue. I never saw anything from Crafton that explicitly said that they believed that the former developers were going to keep the bonuses for themselves. In fact, I think in their, if I remember correctly, in their statement, they even say that the plan was always to distribute it to the employees, or at the very least, they were going to give it to the developers, assuming that they would, or the former developers or former leadership, assuming that they would distribute it the way that Unknown Worlds is or was supposed to or should have. Just scrolling through the comments here a little bit. It looks like a lot of people were kind of thinking the same thing I was last night. Like, Chemical Opposite 2389 said, the only reason I believed Krafton's story was because I thought they wouldn't risk a defamation lawsuit, but apparently Krafton is just that crappy of a company. So like, yeah, that's what I was thinking last night too, was, if Krafton is saying these things, they better be ready for a defamation lawsuit if they don't have a serious amount of evidence to back that stuff up. And now that there's an actual lawsuit going on, it does kind of make you feel like, okay, so maybe Ted, Chris, and Max, I think that's Ted, Charlie, and Max think that Krafton is totally defaming them, and they also have evidence for defamation, or at least they have to, the burden of proof will now be on them since they are suing Krafton for defamation. I believe this is how it works, where the former leaders will now have to present evidence that Krafton is lying about the state of the game. That's kind of where we're at with that lawsuit then. And then this happened. This is a leak. Here we go. I'll start on this page. This is a leak of the development of Subnautica 2 and where it currently is. So I'll just kind of start going through this and give my analysis of what I think is going on here. And actually, I've looked through some of the comments. I did a little bit of research. And this is what's going on here. So this was leaked from Krafton. We don't know by who. We don't know how. But here it is. Subnautica 2 milestone review in May 2025 final recommendation. The recommendation is to propose to launch with an MVP level build that allows players to experience the core loop at a high level of quality. The current version of Subnautica 2 is expected to deliver a certain level of performance based on its existing fandom, but it is deemed to lack the level of polish and market impact required to drive IP growth and expansion. So basically right there it is saying that the early access version of the game was not ready. It didn't have enough polish. There wasn't enough content to basically connect with a larger audience. There wasn't enough to there that the core audience, the really, the big Subnautica fans, I was trying to come up with a funny name to describe Subnautica fans. Those people would love it. Those people would absolutely love the game, but there wasn't wide enough appeal based on what was already available in the early access or in the version of the game that they're describing here. So it would be a good idea for them to not launch it just yet, because there was no way that they were going to grow the audience in such a way that would create hype for the actual full release of the game, which makes sense. That's just good business sense. You don't want to release something that isn't going to have at least a certain amount of wider appeal or the potential for wider appeal. I mean, obviously you want to create something that's going to please your core fan base, but you also want to try and do what you can to get new players into the game, to bring new people into the Subnautica fandom. That's just good business practice for growing one, Unknown Worlds, and two, the IP, so that it could be something that is sustainable for the company. I mean, at the end of the day, these creative projects and things, they're creative. We love projects where people pour their heart and soul into them. They still have to make money. People still need to make some money so that they can stay in business and make these projects, and that does require a certain level of doing things in the game or crafting these creative experiences that appeal to wider audiences. I mean, it makes a lot more business sense to make a game that appeals to, say 100 people who all pay $5 for a game. I'm just throwing these numbers out there as for an example, than it would to make a game that only appeals to 10 people who pay $5 for the game. At that point, you've got a whole team whose families you're trying to help support. It makes sense. To develop the slide goes on to develop Subnautica 2 into Krafton's global franchise IP, it is recommended to enhance the content volume and level of polish before launching so that it can appeal to a broader market from the early access release stage. Yeah, so it's again saying that there's not enough here. There isn't enough content here. And you can see where they are. So as the game currently is, they had a couple of biomes, a couple of creatures. They had one chapter of the overall narrative completed. It says, while the game includes a variety of content, it currently lacks the freshness and volume expected of a sequel. In addition, it falls short of meeting the high expectations of the OWSC and the Asian market. Now, admittedly, I don't know what the OWSC is, but basically the gist I'm getting from this half of the slide is that there is not enough content in this game as it stands to release it for early access, at least as far as Krafton is concerned. And honestly, I understand that rationale. What they're displaying over here, illustrating over here in the to be column, so content volume increase of over 30% compared to version 1 is expected, along with launch level gameplay polish. The build should allow players to experience the core loop with a high level of completeness. A total of 6 regions are planned for development based on the 1.0 version. TBD for creatures, and then TBD for equipment progression, yada yada, basically saying what they want included in the early access launch version of the game. And obviously, looking at the difference between the two sides here, there's about half as much content in this game as they want there to be so far for an early access, possibly even less. Which brings us to this slide, which gives the overall rationale for the reasoning behind shifting the early access launch. I believe this was just from 2023 to 2025. So the game's content volume has been, 23 to 25. The game's content volume has been scaled down compared to the initial early access spec target, making it necessary to reassess the feasibility of the planned launch. Due to an overall shift in direction during the development period, development efforts appear to have been concentrated on a smaller set of content. As a result, the scope and volume of the content have been reduced or modified from the original plan, indicating the need to reassess the release timeline and roadmap. Okay, now, from what I understand of this, from what I think is happening here, is that it's going through just how little content there was versus their expectations for releasing this game. And actually, so if you look through this table here, it does say, it gives, the 2023 Q2 early access target content. There's this much content, and it was scaled back so that they could try and release in 2024. And then it was scaled back again so that they could try and release in Q2 of 2025. So the game was supposed to be out 2 years ago now at this point, or the early access was supposed to be out 2 years ago at this point. And then the second time it was postponed has already passed us in Q2 of 2025. You can see how much less content there was in this version of the game versus the early version. Now, I might be misreading this. It might be that these were, planned launches, like they were going to start with this one, and then they were going to add this one, and then they were going to add this one. But it doesn't seem like it, because if you look on this right side column here, it says, so key reductions and changes from year to year. You've got, with the biomes specifically, compared to Q2 of 2023, 2 biomes have been removed. Deep Start added, and the number of key POIs in the Coral Garden area increased. I think that just means that they were focusing on some aspects of the content that was here, or that was supposed to be released back in 2023. Not really sure. But I think this bottom part kind of gives us some clarity. So it says, compared to the originally planned early access launch specifications, the current target content volume has been reduced or adjusted across various elements such as biomes, creatures, equipment progression, and features due to a gap between the current state and the content volume assumed during the initial launch planning. It is necessary to reassess the timeline and roadmap. There's not enough content. There's just not enough content for it to release. It has a rather unfortunate number of upvotes. I'm not logged in, so I can't upvote it for them. But there's just not enough content. And a few people kind of are saying what I'm thinking now, at least, if whatever you can try and make of the situation. But like New Software 2219 says, I don't want to believe it, but if this leak turns out to be true, then it suggests that Unknown Worlds wasn't even able to reach the 20% development milestone originally set for early access, even after years of delays. And if Krafton had to lower that bar to just 10% and they still couldn't meet it, then it honestly is understandable why the founders were let go and the release was delayed. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And honestly, that's kind of what I said in last night's video, where I said, like, they kept pushing the game back. What does it say about the leaders that the game had been delayed a couple of times at that point already, and then they were let go, and then it was pushed back again? And then the company comes out and says, look, everybody's still going to get whatever bonuses they're deserve, or what they deserve, but these leaders were let go. So I don't know. It just kind of seemed like maybe there was more here than meets the eye. And I think New Software 2219 here, again, I'm assuming that's not his given name. I'm assuming they're probably right. That's kind of how the situation feels to me right now. So like accomplished ad 8968, interesting screen name, says, I've been saying this since the beginning. Game's probably been stuck in development hell for so long, and Krafton needed someone to crack the whip. If what Krafton's saying about the former leadership being focused on personal projects is true, then it aligns with what they're saying here and with what was released in this document. The fact that there wasn't enough content means that there wasn't a lot of direction for creating new content. People were just stuck on what they knew, and they didn't really know how to proceed or move forward because leadership wasn't moving the project forward. There was just kind of, the soldiers that were doing the little tasks, and they maybe got those done, but then focused on getting them even more done because they didn't know how to move on to the next task. That's poor project management, which aligns with Krafton's accusation that the former leadership were stuck on personal projects rather than actually working on this game. That's kind of how I think the situation is right now. Honestly, I could be totally wrong. We could see a lot more come out because of this lawsuit. And actually, we probably will see a lot more come out because of this lawsuit. But that being said, right now, does it look good for anybody particularly? No, not really. Because you want to be on the side of the little guy who, this was supposed to be their passion project. This was supposed to be their life's work, if you will. And maybe that's just not the case. Maybe they were actually dropping the ball here. But also on the other side, you've got a, quote unquote, soulless corporation that's trying to make money from their products, which, duh, of course they need to make money from their products. So I don't know that anyone's necessarily a good guy here. But I will say that if someone looks worse than the other in this situation so far, it's the former leadership at Unknown Worlds. But again, could be totally wrong, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. What do you think is going on? Do you plan on buying the game at this point? Let me know in the comment section. Again, if you don't mind liking the video and subscribing, that would be awesome. I'd really love to grow this channel. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video. Maybe it's an update on what's going on here.